Gill, Titus 1 verse 5. Scripture quote, "For this cause left I thee in Crete," unquote, Gill, not in his voyage to Rome, Acts 27 verse 7, but rather when he came from Macedonia into Greece, Acts 20 verse 2. Crete is, Crete, is an island in the Mediterranean Sea now called Candy. Footnote from the reader. It is now called Greek. That's Crete. And there's a major city there that is spelled Candia. That's Candia. End of the footnote. See Gill on Acts 2:11. Here Paul preached the gospel to the conversion of many, but not having time to finish what he began, left Titus here for that purpose. Scripture quote, "That thou shouldest set in order the things that are wanting," unquote. Gill. That is, form the youth converts into gospel order, into a regular gospel church state, settle a proper discipline among them, instruct them more largely into the doctrines of the gospel, and create their manners, and direct them in everything, both with respect to faith and practice. Scripture quote, "And ordain elders in every city," unquote. Gill. For this island, though it was not above 50 miles in breadth and 270 in length, yet had 100 cities in it, and it seems as if the gospel had been preached in most, if not all of them, and churches were formed. However, in as many of them as there were churches, the apostle would have Titus see to it and take care that they had proper officers fixed in them, particularly elders, pastors, or overseers, to preach the gospel and administer the ordinances to them, to watch over them in the Lord, and put the laws of Christ's house in execution, and keep up a strict discipline in it, according to the will of God. What Titus was to do in this affair was to put the churches upon looking out, and choosing from among themselves proper persons for such service, and to direct, assist, and preside at the elections and ordinances of them. For we are not to suppose that the ordination of elders was the sole act of Titus, or alone resided in him, but in like manner as Paul and Barnabas ordained elders in every church, by the suffrage of the people, signified by the stretching out of their hands, in which they directed, presided, and also assisted in prayer with fasting. Acts chapter 14, verse 23. Scripture quote, "As I had appointed thee," unquote, Gill, when he left him at Crete, when he gave him orders and instructions both with respect to the persons and the qualifications whom he would have ordained, and with respect to the manner in which it should be done. The former of these he repeats in the following verses, from all which it clearly appears that there were churches in Crete, and pastors placed over those churches, very closely the Greeks, who were at Jerusalem on the day of Pentecost, Acts chapter 2, verse 11, and heard Peter's sermon, and were converted by him. Some of them, returning to their own country, might first bring the gospel to this island and lay the foundation of a gospel church state here. It seems by what is said in this text that the Apostle Paul was in this island himself and preached the gospel, and after him Titus, whom he left behind. And if any credit is to be given to the subscription of this epistle, he was the first bishop of the church in it, and it is certain that in the 2nd century there were churches in this island, particularly at Gortyna, that's Gortyna, and other places, to whom Dionysius, bishop of Corinth, wrote letters in which he greatly extols Philip their bishop, and another letter of his to the Gnossians, that's Gnossians, or to the church at Gnosus, Gnossus, another city in Crete. He makes mention of Pinytus, that's Pinytus, as their bishop, and whom he commends for their orthodox faith, great knowledge of divine things, and care of his flock. And both these lived in the times of the emperors Verus, That's Antoninus, Mverus, and Tommodus, which churches, no doubt, continued in the 3rd century, since in the 4th we read of bishops sent from Crete to the synod at Sardica, that's Sardica, and in the 5th century the bishop of Gortyna in Crete is reckoned among the bishops in the council of Chalcedon, that's Chalcedon, and in the 6th century Theodorus, Theodorus, bishop of the same place, subscribed in the 5th synod at Constantinople, and in the 7th century Paul, archbishop of Crete, Basil, bishop of Gortyna, with several other bishops of the church in the island, were present at the 6th synod at Constantinople. In the 8th century, as appears from the Acts of the Nicene Synod, Helias, that's Helias, was bishop of Crete. Anastasius, that's Anastasius, bishop of Knossos, a city in it, and Miletu, that's Melito, Leontins, that's Leontins, and Galatas, that's Glatas, bishops of the other places in the same island. And in the 9th century, the bishop of Gortyna, in defense of the cause of Christ, became a martyr. So far, churches and bishops bearing the Christian name are to be traced in this island. End of Titus chapter 1, verse 5.